the course of yesterday, you would have seen a lot of people on the Wallaby, but on foot on the Sunshine Coast because it was the annual Coastrek. So we're going to catch up with Dabid Lloyd now. First up, David, well done for your trek yesterday. Did you do the 20, the 30, the 45 or the 60?
I did the 45 Wallaby yesterday. I'm enjoying listening to that story. I've learned a lot. So from now on, these walks are going to be the Wallaby for me.
Yeah, well, look, there's even more. So Rhonda has texted in from Town Mountain saying on the Wallaby originated 100 years ago when the swaggies would go from town to town with their swags. Now, swags was something that my producer Hamish, being born in England, wasn't familiar with that. So that also fits into today's talk back of, only Aussies get this. They were looking for work wherever they could find it. So that's why they were hopping from one place to another, carrying all their possessions on their shoulders or on their backs. Thank you very much for that one, Rhonda. Okay, David, where were we? We were talking about which length trek you did. Yeah, how did you go?
Look, it was terrific, actually. I have to say, this is one of the most beautiful parts of the world to walk in. The sun was just coming up as we set off, what can I say? I had the joy of walking 45 kilometres along your beautiful coastline here, and with roughly 2,000 of my closest friends. So it was yeah.
Now, you've pledged to hike all 5 Coastrek events this year. What has inspired you to do that, David?
Well, look, the Coastrek event itself, really, it was set up by this wonderful organisation called Wild Women on Top, and they decided that they would encourage people to hike to maintain their health, mental health, physical health, heart health. I did one of them last year when I first got to know them, and I was just completely inspired. I mean, it's such a wonderful event. You walk in some of the most beautiful parts of Australia, and you're walking with people who, one way or another, are trying to maintain their heart health or improve it after they've had a heart event. There were many people yesterday who were finishing the walk and they're saying, well, I had a heart attack last year, but I felt I ought to get back on the horse, so to speak, and do my best. And yeah, it's just inspiring. Must have talked to 300 or 400 people yesterday, and it was a wonderful day out.
Wow, and I've learnt something because, it's easy to imagine that after a heart event, you'd be nervous about exercise. You'd be nervous about, putting some strain on the heart. But in fact, people are getting out and getting fitter than ever.
Yeah, well, and it's the right thing to do. It was, I suppose, maybe 30, 40 years ago where we thought that the best thing to do after a heart attack was to have a lie down and rest for the rest of your life. But no, getting back up and walking, and there are people around the world who've done Ironman events after they've had a heart attack. So no, getting back on the horse and being fit again is absolutely the best response to having any form of heart disease, really.
So you've done the Coastrek trek in Sydney and on the Mornington Peninsula a little earlier this year, and
Right.
the spectacular one yesterday. And didn't we turn the weather on for you, David? Hello.
Everyone. The reason this event, I think, is so popular with people down south. I live in Melbourne, and I mean, Melbourne mornings are lovely, obviously, but in July you do get up in the morning and in the dark, and you think, I wonder what it's like on the Sunshine Coast. So there was a lot of people from my part of the country up yesterday too, and it was stunning, I have to say, absolutely beautiful, and it wasn't too hot either. I mean, we did a bit of running along as well, so it didn't take too long, and didn't get too hot, so it felt like a lovely day out. It really did.
I understand that Coastrek here on the Sunshine Coast, the event aimed to raise $850,000 for the Heart Foundation, and the funds go to supporting 4 key areas. Can we talk through those?
Yes, of course. And look, I'm pretty sure we smashed the 850,000
Yes.
record.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say. I was doing a little talk yesterday afternoon, and I was being interviewed, and they said, how much have you raised? And I said, well, I'm pretty sure we're up to 650,000 now. And then I had people holding a phone in front of me saying, no, you idiot, we're over 750 now.
Wow.
I think we went through the 850 and are well on the way to the $1 million now. So thank you everybody who's supported us. I just want to say that. But yeah, there's 4 areas that we're focusing on devoting these funds to. Generally, I mean, broadly speaking, at the Heart Foundation, what we do is 3 things. We try to prevent people from getting heart disease, understand what causes risk, and stop risk turning into heart disease. We try to help people live long and happy and productive lives if they have heart disease and manage it well. And then we fund research, which basically informs those 2 things. And Coastrek and Wild Women on Top are supporting us in 4 areas, in all of those, in four focuses in those 3 areas. And that's women's heart health, to improve inequities in heart disease. And heart disease manifests differently in women; it's experienced differently. If you and I go together to an emergency in a hospital and we're both having a heart attack, it's likely that I'll get triaged first because I'm a man and everybody expects me to have heart disease, and the symptoms are more obvious. So that's one area that we, or better understood, I should say. That's one area that we're focusing on. The second is supporting initiatives to end rheumatic heart disease in the top end of Australia, the top half of Australia, where we have some of the highest rates of rheumatic heart disease in our First Nations communities in the top half of Australia of anywhere in the world. Look, a lot of people don't know that, and it's frankly a bit shameful that we do. We could have knocked it out altogether, I think, if there'd been better policy and better approach to it over many years. So we at the Heart Foundation are very determined that this is going to be the last decade where rheumatic heart disease does affect our First Nations communities. We are supporting the expansion of jump rope for heart in schools around the country. There's I'm sure many of your listeners were involved in jump rope for heart when they were kids at school. It's over 40 years old now, and it's a wonderful way of both raising funds and promoting heart health in the younger generation, which is really important. Wow. And funding fellowships too. Yeah. So yeah. Any given time, there's 300 odd people around the country doing heart research funded by the Heart Foundation, and Coastrek is helping us support them too.
Well, thank you so much. I'm sure the celebrations at Noosa at the end of the Big 60, and those who perhaps drove the last little bit to join that were fantastic last night. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Dabid Lloyd, and good luck with your next 2, heading to South Australia next, the Fleurieu Peninsula. That's Dabid Lloyd, who is doing every single Coastrek around the country this year. Fundraising still open till Sunday. So the best way to contribute is to visit coastrek.com.au and click on donate to support any of our worthy teams. Everybody who's doing it is making a difference, and fantastic to know that the Sunshine Coast has opened their pockets and their hearts and put on their walking shoes